there are people today who wake up every morning already emotionally exhausted before the day even begins. Not because life is physically impossible, but because their hearts have become too affected by everything around them. One negative comment ruins their entire mood. One disappointment makes them lose hope. One betrayal changes the way they see themselves. One hardship causes them to question their future completely. And slowly, without realizing it, they hand over control of their peace to situations and temporary problems. But the believer must understand something very important. Not everything deserves access to your heart. This dunya is full of tests. People will disappoint you. Situations will change unexpectedly. Life will not always go according to your plans. There will be moments when others misunderstand you, criticize you, or even try to hurt you emotionally. If you allow every opinion, every problem, and every hardship to control your emotions completely, when you will spend your life emotionally unstable. This is why strengthening your connection with Allah is so important. Because when the heart becomes attached to Allah more than the dunya, temporary things begin losing their power over you. Many people today are carrying emotional wounds because they became too dependent on people for validation, happiness, and self-worth. They feel valuable only when others approve of them. They feel confident only when life is easy. But what happens when people change? What happens when criticism comes? What happens when life becomes difficult? A heart built only on worldly things will always remain fragile because worldly things constantly change. But a heart connected deeply to Allah develops strength, stability, and peace even during hardship. One of the greatest forms of emotional freedom is reaching a point where you stop allowing every small thing to disturb your inner peace. This does not mean becoming cold-hearted or emotionless. Islam does not teach people to ignore feelings. Even the prophets experienced sadness, grief, and pain. But they did not allow temporary difficulties to destroy their trust in Allah. That is the difference. They felt pain, but they remained spiritually strong because their hearts relied upon Allah more than the opinions of people or the changing conditions of life. Sometimes people's words hurt deeply because human beings naturally want acceptance and kindness. But not every opinion deserves importance. There are people who criticize others simply because they themselves are unhappy internally. There are people who misunderstand you because they only see a small part of your journey. If you spend your life trying to satisfy everyone, you will exhaust your soul completely. The believer learns to focus more on pleasing Allah than pleasing every human being around them. Because once Allah is pleased with you, the opinions of people begin losing their ability to break your heart completely. There are also hardships in life that seem overwhelming in the moment. Financial stress, heartbreak, failures, loneliness, uncertainty about the future, all these things can affect the heart deeply. But when a believer trusts Allah sincerely, they begin understanding that difficult moments are temporary. Pain changes. Situations change. Seasons change. Allah never changes. And the one who relies upon Allah develops a type of inner calmness that the dunya cannot easily shake. There are many people today emotionally drained, not because life is impossible, but because they allow too many things to control their peace. A single negative comment can ruin their entire day. One criticism stays in their mind for weeks. One disappointment makes them question their worth completely. They become deeply affected by people's opinions, social pressure, comparisons, failures, and temporary situations. Slowly, without realizing it, they hand over the condition of their heart to the dunya. This is dangerous because the dunya constantly changes. People change, situations change, emotions change, and if your peace depends entirely on these unstable things, your heart will never truly rest. But the stronger your connection with Allah becomes, the less power people's opinions, negativity, and temporary problems will have over your inner peace. One of the biggest struggles human beings face is caring too much about what people think of them. Many people spend their entire lives trying to gain acceptance from others. They constantly worry about how they appear, whether people approve of them, or whether they are being praised enough. And because of this, they become emotionally controlled by human opinions. If people praise them, they feel confident. If people criticize them, they feel broken. Their emotional stability depends entirely on others. But people are imperfect. Human beings can praise you today and criticize you tomorrow. If your happiness depends completely on people's opinions, your heart will always remain unstable. This is why strengthening your relationship with Allah is so important. When your heart becomes attached to Allah more than the dunya, something changes inside you. You stop needing constant validation from people because you begin understanding that the approval of Allah matters more than the approval of human beings. This does not mean you become arrogant or disrespectful. It simply means you stop allowing every opinion to enter your heart so deeply. You realize that people only see parts of your story while Allah sees everything: your intentions, your struggles, your sincerity, and your efforts. There are people who spend years emotionally destroyed by criticism because they forgot that human beings will always have opinions no matter what you do. Even the prophets were criticized despite their purity and truthfulness. People mocked them, rejected them, and misunderstood them. So how can ordinary human beings expect to escape criticism completely? The believer learns that not every voice deserves space inside the heart. Some people speak from jealousy. Some speak from ignorance. Some criticize because they themselves are unhappy internally. If you carry every negative word people say, your soul will become exhausted. A strong connection with Allah creates emotional stability because the heart begins relying on something permanent instead of temporary. The dunya constantly changes. Friends may change. Relationships may end. People who once supported you may later distance themselves. Life itself can shift unexpectedly. But Allah remains constant through every season of life. His mercy does not disappear. His love for sincere believers does not weaken. His wisdom never fails. And once a person truly understands this, temporary things begin losing their power over the heart. Many people today are also emotionally affected by comparison. Social media has made this even worse because people constantly compare their lives to what they see around them. They look at others' success, beauty, wealth, relationships, or achievements and begin feeling unhappy with themselves. Comparison slowly steals peace from the heart because it creates endless dissatisfaction. But a believer connected deeply to Allah understands that every person has a different journey, different tests, and different blessings. Allah did not create all lives to look the same. Some people are tested through hardship while others are tested through comfort. Some receive certain blessings earlier while others receive them later. Trusting Allah means believing that His timing and distribution of blessings contain wisdom, even when life feels unfair. When the connection with Allah becomes stronger, comparison begins losing its grip on the heart. A person starts focusing more on gratitude instead of constantly looking at what others have. They begin understanding that peace does not come from having everything. Peace comes from trusting Allah with whatever He has chosen for you. This mindset protects the heart from unnecessary jealousy, insecurity, and emotional exhaustion. Another thing that affects many people deeply is temporary problems. A small hardship enters their life, and suddenly fear takes over completely. They begin imagining the worst possible outcomes. Anxiety controls their thoughts. But the believer learns that no problem is greater than Allah's power. Every hardship has an ending written by Allah. Every difficulty is temporary, no matter how heavy it feels in the moment. The stronger your trust in Allah becomes, the calmer your heart remains during storms. This does not mean believers never feel pain. Islam does not teach people to become emotionless. Even the prophets experienced grief, sadness, heartbreak, and fear. But they did not allow those emotions to destroy their faith or inner stability. They cried, but they trusted Allah. They struggled, but they remained patient. That is real emotional strength. Not pretending pain does not exist, but refusing to let pain pull your heart away from Allah. Sometimes Allah allows difficult people or painful situations into your life to teach you emotional maturity. He teaches you that your worth does not decrease because someone failed to appreciate you. He teaches you that rejection from people does not mean rejection from Him. He teaches you that criticism cannot destroy a heart connected sincerely to Allah. These lessons create spiritual strength that changes the way a person experiences life. A person deeply connected to Allah also becomes less emotionally controlled by worldly success and failure. They continue making effort, working hard, and pursuing goals, but their identity no longer depends entirely on outcomes. If something goes wrong, they do not completely collapse emotionally because they trust Allah's wisdom. They know that closed doors may contain hidden protection and delays may contain hidden mercy. This trust creates balance inside the heart. One of the most beautiful things about relying on Allah is that it gives the soul a place to rest. Human beings become emotionally tired because they constantly try to control everything themselves. They worry about every outcome, every opinion, every uncertainty. But when the heart truly trusts Allah, some of that emotional burden begins lifting. The believer realizes they do not need to carry the future alone because Allah is already in control of every or when you detail, and once this realization settles deeply into the heart, negativity begins losing its power. Temporary hardships no longer feel permanent. Criticism no longer destroys self-worth. Delays no longer create hopelessness. Why? Because the soul understands that Allah's control is greater than every problem, every opinion, and every fear. The believer continues walking through life with patience and trust, knowing that no matter how difficult the dunya becomes, Allah remains enough for the heart that sincerely depends on Him.